It's called The View?
It's called The View. It's not called The Facts.
Yeah, but isn't it interesting that it's called, I mean, I don't think they meant this when Barbara Walters invented it a long time ago, but it's The View.
Well,
that's the problem in America.
But
there is one view,
right, and
one
that's clearly
true opinion, and everybody else can go sit in the corner.
That's correct.
Sunny Hostin never stops ripping on the cops. View co-host Sunny Hostin says she introduced her son to the police ahead of time so they don't harass him for jogging in her all-white neighborhood.
But started like any other morning on The View. Bright lights, polished smiles, and a panel of hosts ready to jump into another lively debate. But what looked like a normal segment quickly turned into one of those TV moments people couldn't stop talking about. Picture this, Sunny Hostin leaned in with complete confidence, delivering a point she clearly expected the audience to applaud. Instead, it blew up almost instantly. The backlash was quick, intense, and came from two people who rarely find themselves on the same side of an argument. Greg Gutfeld fired the first shot, relaxed, confident, and smiling like he already knew how the whole thing would end. Then Bill Maher stepped in. Calm, measured, and razor sharp, he picked apart her arguments piece by piece with remarkable precision. Together, they didn't just challenge her views. They pulled apart the illusion using humor, solid reasoning, and perfect timing, turning the entire exchange into a memorable on-air takedown.
To hear you use the term, because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the Black community to note that we must be aware of social injustices.
But words
and
migrate.
So why is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing, and originally that was absolutely a great thing. Alert to injustice, who's not for that? But words do migrate. Now, I'll use any term you want.
Okay.
Because maybe that is a word that's triggering, and so let's not use that word. I don't know, want to call it the super far left?
Okay, so there is Bill just laying out something true. You can see the way Sunny Hostin, the way she's touching her above her eye, and she can't even look at him as she's talking to him because she's an activist, not a journalist or whatever it is that she purports to be.
What made the moment so striking was how unprepared Sunny seemed. She paused in the middle of her thought, and for a split second, her expression shifted from confidence to disbelief. It was the kind of look that said she had just realized the conversation wasn't going the way she expected, and it was all happening live on television. Even then, she kept going, holding on to her argument and trying to regain control. But what came next wasn't a comeback. It was a difficult moment to recover from. The exchange grew more intense, and the tension became impossible to ignore. Then came the biggest turning point. Trying to steer the discussion back in her favor, Sunny brought up the word woke, seemingly hoping it would change the direction of the debate. Instead, it had the opposite effect. Her critics quickly pushed back, the audience sensed the shift, and it became clear that the momentum had slipped out of her hands.
I think a conservative once said to me, what you guys in the liberal side of it don't get about Donald Trump is we don't like him either.
Yeah.
It's just that in this country, it's binary. I mean, gender may not be binary, but politics is. You only get two choices. And the stuff that they are afraid of, they see Donald Trump as a bulwark against, you know, and that stuff is a lot closer to the home. It's like my kid is coming home from school and they're not allowed to tell me if they're transitioning. The school is going to take the side of the kid over the parent, stuff like that.
She argued that the word had been taken over by conservatives and pulled away from its original meaning in Black activism. But Maher saw it differently. Staying calm and measured, he pushed back without dismissing the term's history. Instead, he argued that its public meaning had changed over time, to the point where even some former supporters now used it sarcastically. Maher wasn't criticizing where the word came from. His point was that its meaning had evolved, and in his view, not for the better. He argued that a movement centered on justice had gradually become, at times, more focused on outrage than persuasion. The mood in the studio seemed to shift. The conversation grew more tense, and even some of Sunny's co-hosts appeared more reserved as the exchange unfolded. Greg Gutfeld leaned back with a slight grin, looking content to let the discussion speak for itself. Sunny tried to regain her footing, but her response moved into examples about tipping Instacart drivers and buying fire logs. In a debate about language and culture, the change in direction stood out. Rather than bringing the conversation back on track, it made the exchange feel even more scattered. By that point, Gutfeld and Maher stayed on the same line of argument. Instead of simply disagreeing with her, they continued challenging her points one by one, keeping the pressure on throughout the discussion.
It's about the view. It's become like a medical hospital that displays human misfailure. Like it's like here, let's look at this political oddity. You know, it's like it really is like the left-wing equivalent of a carnival sideshow, except instead of bearded ladies and fat clowns and two-headed cows. Well, let me rephrase that. But The View is a victim of the sunk cost fallacy. You know, how can you now speak the truth when for years you've been telling lie after lie after lie? Now you're carrying this big bag of rocks around you because it's too harmful for their ego to admit that we really were dishonest.
Then came the moment that grabbed everyone's attention. Maher didn't raise his voice or try to overpower anyone. He simply delivered one calm line that immediately shifted the conversation. Don't tell me the left hasn't changed. For a brief moment, the studio fell quiet. Sonny paused before responding, and the exchange took on a different tone. Maher continued, arguing that many of the same people who once strongly defended free speech and open debate had, in his view, become more comfortable policing acceptable opinions. Whether people agreed or not, his point clearly landed. Then Greg Gutfeld jumped in without hesitation. He argued that The View had become less of a conversation and more of a political performance. He even described it as a hospital for human misfailure, using humor to underline his criticism. By then, the discussion had grown noticeably more tense. Sonny tried to respond, but her points became less focused as she moved between different examples and arguments. At times, she looked frustrated, adjusting her posture and rubbing her forehead as the debate continued. There was no easy way to change the subject. The cameras kept rolling, and every reaction was captured as the exchange played out in front of a live audience.
We have our own kind of way of demonizing, but we don't do it the way we'll say.
We do it tastefully.
Tastefully, I think we're very low key in demonizing people. We'll say you smack of socialists, but we won't call you Hitler. But we go but it is nice. I do think it's refreshing that they've moved on from Hitler. They probably had a morning meeting. They probably had Pol Pot. No, not enough people know who Pol Pot is. Mao, well, he's kind of short. So maybe Mussolini was tall, and that's why they said pint-sized Mussolini. The point is, people have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions?
Yeah.
Like you said, and it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say on The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there.
The debate had grown beyond any single point Sonny was making. The bigger issue was how difficult it became when she faced guests who weren't willing to back down or let her arguments pass without a challenge. The usual rhythm of the show disappeared, replaced by long pauses and uneasy looks around the table as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Then Greg Gutfeld raised the temperature. He argued that Sonny relied too much on other people's views, joking that she got her opinions from her husband. A moment later, he followed it with an even harsher personal remark, drawing an audible reaction from the audience. Sonny paused, seemingly weighing how to respond. Bill Maher took a different approach. Instead of matching the personal attacks, he returned to the substance of the discussion. Calmly and directly, he explained why he believed her arguments didn't hold up, making his case without raising his voice. Sonny tried to shift the conversation once more, leaning on familiar political language and broader themes, but Greg interrupted with another pointed criticism, arguing that she approached issues more like an activist than a journalist. By then, the tension in the studio was impossible to ignore. What started as a routine debate had turned into a sharp clash over credibility, perspective, and the direction of the conversation itself, with Sonny at the center of it all.
Can we just understand that part of our sorry racial history in this country is that the point of view from a black person is often going to be very different and sometimes shocking to a white person.
View co-host Sunny Hostin says she introduced her son to the police ahead of time so they don't harass him for jogging in her all-white neighborhood. Roll it, Elvis.
As a mother of black children, I know that black boys are not given the presumption of innocence and the presumption of youth. I have had to be in the position where I have gone to my local police department because I know my son is going to be training for the Junior Olympics, running around the neighborhood in an all-white neighborhood, and I have brought him to the police and said, He belongs to me. This is my son. Do not harass him. Do not stop him.
Just when it seemed the debate couldn't get any more tense, Sunny's response took another unexpected turn. She began moving quickly from one point to the next, relying on familiar talking points delivered with complete confidence. Her energy stayed high, but her arguments started to feel scattered. Greg Gutfeld and Bill Maher barely interrupted. Instead, they watched as she shifted from one example to another, touching on everything from everyday life to larger political issues without clearly connecting the dots. The applause she seemed to expect never really came. What stood out wasn't her confidence, it was the growing gap between her delivery and the clarity of her message. Bill listened patiently, looking unconvinced, while Greg's quiet grin said plenty without him needing to speak. Then came another controversial claim. Sunny argued that being able to have a calm, nuanced conversation about difficult issues was itself a form of privilege. Maher didn't react emotionally. He simply answered with one short, direct response that immediately put the focus back on her argument.
But don't tell me the left
Or maybe the super far right.
Well, he's talking about the left. Well, then
Okay, but we talked about that. I mean, I think we agree about the danger of the super far right, and I can't say it enough. I think they're the bigger threat. But don't tell me that the left hasn't changed.
She is feeling guilty about being a successful black lady who lives with white people, so she has to play.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Successful slave-owning black woman. Get it right.
Yeah,
Gutfeld.
slave-owned. Her ancestors owned
Yes.
slaves. So she has to play up this I am a target of oppression, so she can remain on a credentialed level with other blacks.
Maher's reply was simple. Reality doesn't require a trauma resume. He didn't raise his voice or try to score points. He just made his argument calmly, and for a moment, Sunny paused before responding. As the debate continued, the contrast between their approaches became more noticeable. Sunny returned to familiar themes about personal experience and social issues, while Maher and Greg Gutfeld kept challenging her reasoning from a different perspective. At times, her responses seemed to shift from one point to another, making the exchange feel less focused. Greg barely needed to jump in. His expressions alone suggested he believed the conversation was moving in his favor. By then, the debate had become less about one specific issue and more about two very different ways of seeing the world. Maher and Gutfeld continued pressing their case, while Sunny struggled to regain the momentum as the discussion drew on.
For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe.
I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
Yeah. So how are you feeling, my friend?
I think it's actually pretty interesting that my husband and I have shared roots.
Yeah.
Sunny entered the discussion with confidence, but as the debate continued, she struggled to defend several of her points under sustained criticism. One of the biggest moments came when she argued that many Republican women support a system that ultimately works against them. The comment immediately shifted the mood and sparked strong reactions around the table. Greg Gutfeld mostly responded with sarcasm and humor, while Bill Maher stayed focused on challenging the logic behind her arguments. Rather than raising their voices, both kept pressing their points, forcing the conversation into deeper territory. As the exchange went on, Sunny moved from topic to topic, trying to tie together issues like race, economics, and social justice. But her responses began to feel scattered, making it harder to keep the discussion focused. Maher continued asking direct questions, and Gutfeld's reactions often spoke louder than his words. Near the end, Maher posed one final question about open-mindedness and disagreement. Sunny paused before answering, and the moment left a lasting impression on viewers. Whether people sided with Sunny, Maher, or Gutfeld, the debate became one of the most talked about exchanges, highlighting just how sharply divided these conversations have become. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.